At my boyfriend Steven's birthday party, I gave him a $30,000 limited edition timepiece, but he openly embraced and flirted with another woman in public. "Viola, you're so thoughtful," he said, taking the gift with a casual air, like dismissing a servant. On the way home, I was kidnapped and dragged into an abandoned warehouse. Trembling, I dialed his number. The third time the line rang busy, he was kissing someone else in a hotel. The moment the chloroform-soaked rag clamped over my mouth, the warehouse door was violently kicked open. In the dim light, a man undid his collar button, revealing a scar below his Adam's apple. "Let her go." As the drug took hold, I clutched his shirt and begged, "Please, don't leave." When I woke up, I was in a luxurious bedroom, covered in marks, a man's shirt lying nearby. I fled in a panicked daze. 3 months later, as Steven was begging for a second chance, Arthur's bodyguard sealed off the entire restaurant. The man in the tailored suit held up the pearl earring I'd left behind last night, his voice dangerously low. "You left something at my place." The light from the crystal chandelier was painfully bright. I gripped the gift box, the $30,000 limited edition watch, my fingertips ice cold. It was already 9:30, and Steven hadn't shown. The champagne tower and rose arch I had meticulously arranged looked ridiculous and ironic now. The whispering started among our friends, their pity piercing me like 1,000 tiny needles. Finally, the door opened. Steven, in his designer suit, was as devastatingly handsome as ever. My heart hammered, and my body instinctively propelled me forward, a smile fixed on my face. My smile froze. Lily was tucked tightly against his side, her arm locked around his waist. She wore a fiery red dress that cinched her figure alluringly, their closeness impossible to ignore. Steven glanced at the gift box in my hands, then his gaze swept past me as if I were thin air. "Traffic," he mumbled, his fingers gently caressing Lily's hip. I swallowed the sharp, agonizing pain and held out the watch box. "Happy birthday, Steven." He took the box with two indifferent fingers, not even sparing a glance at its contents. "Thanks, Viola," he said, his tone as dismissive as one would use for an unimportant servant. His eyes never left Lily's face. "You are, as thoughtful as always." Then, he ushered Lily directly toward the bar, leaving a wake of laughter that was jarringly theirs alone. The gift box felt like a cold stone brutally lodged in my chest. The stares surrounding me, a blend of heat and pity, made my skin crawl. I straightened my spine. The man I had chased for years had, once again, humiliated me in front of everyone. The midnight chill cut through my thin dress like a knife. I stumbled down a dark alley, the sound of my heels echoing loudly in the silence. My stomach churned, fueled by the memory of Steven's contemptuous casualness when he took the gift and Lily's smug smile. Leaning against the frigid wall, I instinctively dialed Steven's number, my body shaking. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The long, busy signal. A faint metallic scrape sounded from the alley's depths. My heart leaped, sobering me up instantly, and I redialed. The call was ruthlessly disconnected, followed by a cold voicemail saying he was unavailable. Unavailable? He was certainly entwined with Lily in some luxury hotel. Despair and rage intertwined like two flames in my chest. I spun around, desperate to escape the suffocating darkness. A greasy, massive hand clamped down over my mouth. An iron arm tightened around my waist like a shackle. My phone slipped, shattering on the ground. MMMPH. My scream was muffled. I was brutally dragged into the shadows, kicking and thrashing wildly, fighting for my life. "Be quiet!" The hoarse voice reeked of something foul. I was slammed onto the cold concrete floor, leaving me dazed. Several bulky figures closed in. Around me, the silhouettes of derelict machinery and the sharp stench of gasoline filled the air. Terror exploded. I struggled to get up. Damn it! A dirty sneaker viciously kicked my abdomen. The agony was blinding. I curled up like a shrimp, retching, my face slick with cold sweat and tears of humiliation. A bearded man squatted down, gripping my jaw with a force that felt like it would crush bone. "A rich little doll, huh?" he leered obscenely, pulling out a liquid-soaked rag with his free hand. "Steven! Help me!" I screamed, a cry of sheer desperation. Slap! A brutal blow snapped my head sideways, leaving my ears ringing in a sudden, coppery taste of blood in my mouth. The bearded man grinned cruelly, pressing the rag over my nose and mouth. "Save your energy. You'll be screaming later." An icy despair completely engulfed me. I felt my consciousness rapidly being swallowed by the dark. Just as I was about to pass out, boom! A deafening explosion. The rusty iron door was violently blown inward. Smoke and dust billowed through the warehouse. A tall, powerfully built silhouette blocked the doorway. Backlit by the faint exterior light, he was a massive, daunting presence. The dim overhead bulb flickered erratically, outlining his broad frame. He raised a hand, his defined knuckles impatiently loosening the top button of his collar. Below his Adam's apple, a vicious, dark, winding scar was exposed in the light, a chilling, silent warning. A cold, masculine voice shattered the warehouse's deathly silence, "Let her go." As he uttered "let her go," the air in the warehouse seemed to solidify. The kidnappers froze like throttled chickens. The rag dropped from the bearded man's hand. I gasped for breath, but the drug's effects were making my awareness hazy. The figure in the doorway moved. He was a blinding blur of speed. I heard only the dull thuds of impact, the sharp, sickening sound of breaking bone, and brief, agonized cries that erupted in the empty space and instantly died out. Before the dust fully settled, the floor was a carpet of painful groans. The tall figure bypassed everyone, striding directly toward me, where I lay curled up. The intense metallic scent of blood and motor oil, mixed with the cold, crisp night air he'd carried in, and a profoundly aggressive masculine pheromone, instantly enveloped me. My consciousness was fading fast, my vision swimming. I only felt a searing, broad hand, almost gently, brushing the sweat-slicked, sticky strands of hair from my forehead. "Don't be afraid." The low voice was close, carrying a strange power to soothe, yet also like sandpaper over my heart, stirring a deeper tremor. My muddled brain couldn't distinguish reality. The extreme terror of the cold needle prick was supplanted by another, more overwhelming, unfamiliar heat, like lava flowing through my veins. The drug had fully taken effect. I saw only a powerful, blurred outline, and smelled that dizzying blend of gunpowder and cold pine. This was my rescuer. My only lifeline. Hot, so hot. I moaned unconsciously, twisting beneath his hand like a fish out of water. My pearl-white dress was in disarray, outlining my shockingly slender waist and voluptuous curves. My exposed skin glowed in the light, fragile and seductive as porcelain. The searing hand didn't leave my face. The calloused pat of his thumb slowly, deliberately, stroked my bruised and throbbing cheek. The rough contrast against my tender skin sent a jolt through me, eliciting a weak, kitten-like whimper. I instinctively gripped the front of his open shirt, the expensive fabric gave a soft sigh as I unconsciously tugged it, revealing the defined, taut contours of his chest. "Please." I raised my tear and sweat-streaked face, my eyes lost and unfocused, like moisture-clouded glass, pure and tempting. "Don't go, don't leave me." Every word was a blast of scorching breath against his clenched jawline. His breath hitched sharply. I saw his bottomless eyes instantly turn black, like a storm brewing in the deep sea. I clearly felt the pliant, delicate waist beneath my palm, seemingly too fragile to hold. My hot, fragrant breath on his skin was the strongest of liquor. My unconscious clinging and twisting, a single flame, ignited his fiercely suppressed, animalistic instinct. His Adam's apple visibly bobbed, and the strange scar moved with it. "Are you sure? No regrets?" His voice was husky. I took a sharp breath, biting my reddened lip, and gave a slight nod. In the next second, he hesitated no longer. His powerful arm scooped under my legs, the other securely supporting my slender back. He effortlessly lifted my soft, hot, and irresistibly tempting body into his arms. I clung to him like a vine finding its anchor, my burning cheek pressed against the pulsing vein in his neck, my thin arms tightly wrapped around his broad, solid shoulders. A sigh of pure satisfaction slipped past my lips, my warm breath fanning his sensitive neck. His muscles instantly tensed like steel, the arms holding me tightening even more. He strode powerfully through the chaotic warehouse toward the black car waiting outside. The night was deep and dark, swallowing all the fierce desire and abruptly quickened breath in his eyes. My consciousness plummeted as if into the deep sea, flickering, ebbing, and flowing. I felt cocooned in a warm, solid, yet cold steel-tinged darkness. The burning sensation didn't subside, instead, it intensified under a series of more potent, alien sensory stimuli. Hot lips and tongue, bearing unquestionable dominance, branded my cold skin, setting off tiny, spreading trails of fire. Rough, calloused fingertips and palms traced clear pathways across my tender, sensitive waist, back, and sides, each touch triggering uncontrollable shivers and a deeper sense of emptiness. Fragmented moans escaped my lips. I felt like a small boat in a storm, completely controlled by a terrifyingly powerful force. That power was primal, predatory, yet at certain moments, revealed a startling, almost clumsy restraint. Hot sweat dripped onto my collarbone, scorching me. I opened my eyes in a haze, seeing only the distinct, heaving bronze muscles in the darkness, glistening with sweat and power in the weak exterior light, the deep ridges of an 8-pack looking carved. The sexual tension in the air was so thick it was almost tangible, wrapping around me, squeezing. My slender fingers helplessly clawed at that searing, hard rock, leaving faint red marks. A strange, powerful impact reverberated from deep within me, like being pierced by lava. I arched my vulnerable neck like a swan, letting out a dying cry, my consciousness utterly dissolving. Collapsing in a tidal wave of darkness. Before the darkness fully claimed me, I thought I heard a supremely suppressed, beast-like growl near my ear, followed by a deeper, heavier imprint. The weak morning light grudgingly cast a single golden strip on the floor through the heavy velvet curtains. Tiny dust motes danced silently in the beam. I snapped my eyes open. A head-splitting, hangover-like pain. My body felt as though it had been repeatedly run over by a heavy truck, every bone screamed. And certain areas, in particular, throbbed with the clear ache of overuse and a strange, thoroughly invaded soreness. An unfamiliar ceiling. A complex crystal chandelier reflected cold light. The air was permeated with a faint, crisp, and steady masculine scent, pine, cigar, and the wild, entangled scent of the night before. Memory fragments rushed back like a tidal wave, bringing cold terror and scorching shame. The despair of the abandoned warehouse, the cold needle prick, the scarred silhouette in the dim light, followed by those hot, deep eyes burning with desire. The scalding lips, every mark left by the rough palm on my body, that powerful, muscular, overwhelmingly suffocating male body, and the intense pleasure that crushed me. I was ice cold, my blood seeming to freeze instantly. I bolted upright. The smooth, thin blanket slipped away, exposing my slender body covered in telltale red marks, starkly white in the morning light, fragile enough to break. Shame engulfed me like a suffocating tsunami. I looked around in horror. The bedroom was utterly luxurious, cold, and spacious, suggesting the owner's unimaginable wealth and power. By the bed, scattered fragments of my pearl-white dress, violently torn off last night, lay like withered petals. On the carpet, a pure black men's shirt was tossed carelessly, its expensive platinum cufflinks reflecting cold light, silently proclaiming the man's presence and power. The sound of running water from the bathroom warned me, he is here. How could I face him? I cannot stay here. Not for another second. Overwhelming fear and shame eclipsed the physical discomfort. I scrambled off the overly large bed, my legs trembling weakly, nearly collapsing to the floor. I frantically grabbed the remnants of the dress to cover myself, my eyes scanning the bed and carpet in panic, trying to erase all trace of my presence. As I touched my empty earlobe, my small, round right pearl earring was gone. It must have fallen off during the struggle or the entanglement last night. My gaze swept over the messy sheets, my heart pounding. No time. I hesitated for a moment, then decided to abandon the earring. Feeling utterly drained, I leaned against the cold wall, stumbling toward the heavy, closed bedroom door. Outside was an equally luxurious and cold hallway, completely empty. Extreme terror and total desperation fueled my last burst of energy. The ridiculous final fantasy of Stephen had completely dissolved in the night's overwhelming noise and the burning marks covering my body. Barefoot, like a pale ghost, I silently and quickly fled this suffocating, golden cage of luxury, disappearing into the cold city streets of the early morning. 3 months later. I had finally recovered from the nightmare, agreeing to meet Stephen under the pretense of his begging for a reunion, just to give myself a dignified exit. As we sat in the restaurant, him deeply immersed in his affectionate performance, Arthur's bodyguards, a squad of tall men in black suits and dark sunglasses, suddenly sealed off the entire establishment. The air instantly solidified. A figure emerged from the cluster of bodyguards. Arthur. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit that flawlessly outlined his broad shoulders and lean waist, making him even more handsome and formidable. He walked to my table, his chilling presence making it hard to breathe. In his hand, he held a small, round object. He leaned in slightly, his bottomless eyes looking directly into mine, his voice low and dangerous, like a knife made of ice. You left something at my place. It was my pearl earring. 3 months. Enough time for a city to transition from the bleakness of deep winter to the gentle warmth of early summer. Sunlight generously bathed the streets of Blue Bay, a small coastal town, the air thick with salty sea breeze and the sweet scent of baking bread. I pushed open the glass door of the Conch Cottage Cafe. The shell chimes hanging on the door sounded a crisp, light melody. I was wearing a simple cotton linen shirt and jeans, my naturally curly long hair tied back loosely, with a few soft tendrils falling onto my smooth forehead. Stripped of the elaborate makeup, my eyes were still clear, but they held a layer of polished serenity deep within, and a faint, deliberately maintained detachment. "Morning, Viola." Mary, the plump cafe owner, greeted me with a warm smile. "The usual, right?" "Morning, Mary." "Yes, an Americano, please." I returned a gentle smile, my voice a little brighter. I walked to my usual table by the window and opened a book about marine life. On the windowsill was a small, vibrant pot of ivy I'd bought with my meager wages. My fingertips traced the colorful coral pictures on the page. Sunlight streamed through the glass, dancing on my slender fingers and the book. I was no longer the socialite who tried to please Stephen with expensive gifts. For 3 months, I'd hidden myself on a small, obscure island, learning to cook edible meals with cheap ingredients, dealing with finicky customers while waiting tables at the cafe, and sleeping alone in that tiny but clean rental room. The feeling of independence, though tiring, was grounding. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A news alert. I glanced at it casually, but my gaze instantly froze. On the screen, Stephen's handsome face, the sight of which made my stomach clench, was clearly visible. The headline glared, "Socialite Stephen's heartfelt plea to missing girlfriend, Viola, come home, I've been waiting." Socialite? Heartfelt? My lip curled with a cold, sarcastic twist. The discomfort in my stomach wasn't from being moved, but from sheer revulsion. In the photo, Stephen looked mournful, the backdrop a familiar, luxurious restaurant we often frequented. I could almost picture him performing his profound sorrow for the cameras, his real concern the loss and embarrassment caused by the disappearance of his long-term meal ticket. 3 months of silence, and he wasn't worried about my safety, he was worried about losing the convenience of an ATM. My fingers unconsciously tightened around the cold phone casing, my knuckles white. The last surviving bubble of the past had burst completely. A sense of dead silence, like a stone, sank into the deep sea of my heart. "You're Americano, dear." Mary's voice pulled me back to reality. I took a deep breath, suppressing the rising emotions, and gave an impeccable smile. "Thank you, Mary." I picked up the coffee. The scalding liquid slid down my throat, a bitter clarity. Just then, the cafe door was abruptly pushed open with force, causing the chimes to ring out a hurried, chaotic sound. "Viola! It really is you." A tearful, heartfelt voice suddenly shattered the cafe's tranquility. My body stiffened. I turned around in disbelief. "Stephen!" He stood in the doorway, wearing expensive casual wear, his hair immaculate, his face etched with just the right amount of fatigue and surprise, rushing toward me. The sunlight outlined his still handsome features, but all I felt was a chill and nausea. "Viola! I finally found you." Stephen rushed to my table. Ignoring the curious stares, he reached out to grab my hand. "Where have you been these past 3 months? Do you know how worried I was? I've been frantic looking for you. Come back with me." "It was all my fault, I was an ass." "Let's start over. I swear I'll treat you right." His eyes were so sincere they looked ready to spill tears, as if the man who de-embraced Lily and ignored my desperate calls at his birthday party had never existed. I snatched my hand back, as if dodging a plague. "Don't touch me." My voice was low but carried an icy, chilling resolution, a newfound firmness. I stood up, my back straight, looking directly into Stephen's hypocritical eyes. The sunlight through the window illuminated my thin but no longer fearful face. "Stephen, save your cheap performance. I was missing for 3 months. You never once worried about my safety. You worried about losing the person who bought you expensive gifts and satisfied your pathetic vanity. Has the fear of losing your ATM made you drop the act of deep affection?" The sincerity instantly froze on Stephen's face, replaced by sudden embarrassment and fury. "Viola! How can you say that? I truly love you. You." He tried to approach again, raising his voice, filled with the anger of being exposed. "Step away from her." A low, cold voice, like a Siberian cold front, abruptly cut off Stephen's performance. My body went rigid. Incredulously, I turned my head again. "Arthur." He stood by the door, a perfectly tailored dark gray bespoke suit enveloping his tall, powerful, explosively muscular frame. He looked at no one else, his gaze, deep as a cold abyss, fixed solely on me with absolute focus and unquestionable control. His steps were steady and powerful, each one like a beat on a taut drumhead. His immense presence swept through the small space like a tangible wave, causing all the bystanders to instinctively hold their breath, lowering their heads, afraid to make eye contact. The sunlight caught his sharply defined profile, outlining cold, perfect lines. The brittle scar beneath his Adam's apple peeked from his open collar, silently communicating danger. He walked straight to my table, his massive figure casting an overwhelmingly oppressive shadow over me, completely isolating the now pale Stephen next to us. My heart virtually stopped, blood drained from my face, my limbs turning to ice. How is he here? 3 months of careful hiding felt like a ridiculous joke. Arthur's gaze finally moved from my pale face, slowly turning to Stephen, who stood frozen like a statue. The look was cold and superior, as if observing a tiny insect that had wandered into his territory and grossly overestimated itself. There was no anger, only utter indifference and a class-crushing contempt. The look sent a shiver down Stephen's spine, the chill shooting from his feet to the crown of his head. I recognize who this is. The power and resources behind that name could instantly erase him and his proud family. Fear seized him, all his carefully prepared lines and dramatic flair vanished. Arthur didn't even speak. He merely tilted his chin, a movement so slight it was barely perceptible. The nearest bodyguard in the black suit immediately stepped forward, a massive shadow looming over Stephen. The bodyguard's expression was blank, his voice flat and devoid of emotion, yet radiating a powerful, chilling finality. Sir, please leave. No threat was uttered, but the undeniable tone and the sheer oppressive presence were more effective than any intimidation. Stephen's face completely lost all color, his lips trembled, unable to utter a single word. He didn't dare look at me again, nor meet Arthur's cold eyes. He practically scrambled out of the cafe under the bodyguard's silent escort, vanishing into the blinding sunlight outside. A disgraced, frantic clown in full retreat. The cafe was deathly silent, a pin drop would have echoed. Only the shell chimes continued their futile ringing. Arthur finally fixed his gaze entirely on me. I stood frozen, my face paper white, my slender body trembling slightly beneath the thin linen shirt, like a startled fawn pinned to the spot. My clear eyes were filled with immense fear, disbelief, and a threat of cornered defiance. Arthur leaned in slightly, closing the distance. The crisp, severe scent of cedar and cigar, mixed with potent male pheromones, instantly enveloped me. His long fingers slowly reached into the inner pocket of his suit, emerging holding a small, warm, gleaming object that shimmered in the sunlight. The round pearl earring. On the metal post, a spot of dried, dark red blood, like an ineradicable mark. He held the earring, his fingertip gently rubbing that spot of dry red, his deep eyes locked on my terrified, widened pupils. A thin, dangerously captivating curve lifted on his lips. His low, rich voice, like the most perilous string of a cello, struck my taut nerves clearly. You left something at my place. His gaze meaningfully swept over my empty earlobe, before locking firmly back on my eyes, every word carrying an irresistible, invasive meaning. Now, where were you planning to go, you little liar? Stephen's panicked figure vanished into the bright sunlight outside. The cafe was enveloped in a profound silence, broken only by the helpless, agitated sound of the shell chimes tapping against the suffocating stillness. Arthur's presence was as powerful as a mountain, firmly blocking me and confining me to the small space by the window. His lean carried an absolute oppression, the sharp, dangerous scent of cedar and cigar aggressively invaded my nostrils, awakening the most secret fragments of my night memory, the searing lips, the rough palm, the overwhelming impact of that powerful body. My body was rigid, my blood seemingly congealed in my veins. I could even see the turbulent dark currents swirling beneath his dense eyelashes and those bottomless eyes. The pearl earring held between his long fingers, the spot of dark red blood on the post, burned my vision like a red-hot iron. I didn't leave anything. My voice was dry and shaky, as faint as a mosquito's buzz, filled with a weakness I detested. My body instinctively tried to retreat but was firmly pressed against the cold window glass and the hard chair behind me. There was nowhere to go. Arthur ignored my weak denial. His gaze was a physical lock, holding my terrified, dilated pupils captive, filled with penetrating scrutiny and undeniable possession. He slightly raised the hand holding the earring, the cold edge of the pearl gently grazing the smooth, empty skin of my earlobe. That tiny, icy contact was like an electric current, instantly igniting a full-body tremor. Didn't you? His low voice held a trace of husky mockery, like sandpaper scraping across my heart, dangerous yet tempting. His fingertip touched the dried blood stain on the earring post again, a gesture bordering on derision. So, you simply left behind a souvenir? He deliberately slowed his speech, each word fluttering like a feather on my tightly strung nerve endings. My cheeks instantly flushed crimson, the overwhelming shame and mortification of being seen through nearly suffocated me. I wanted to refute, to scream, to push him away, but my body felt entangled by invisible vines, unable to move. The storm in his deep eyes grew stronger, carrying the lingering desire from the night before, and something deeper, something unknown, making my heart flutter. "You're coming with me." It wasn't a question, but a command. Unquestionable, unyielding. He straightened up, no longer looking at my pale, confused face, as if my answer was predetermined. A nearby black-suited bodyguard immediately stepped forward, expressionless but swift, gently placing a high-value check, enough to buy 10 conch cottages, on the counter, while subtly shielding Mary from seeing or questioning. The cafe door opened, the chimes sounding a frantic, chaotic alert. A sleek, cold, black Rolls-Royce Phantom, like a dark beast, pulled up outside. The car door slid open silently, like the gaping mouth of an abyss. I was forcefully propelled into the back seat by an irresistible power. The cold touch of the leather seats, felt through my thin clothing, mixed with the rich, cool scent of pine in the car, made me dizzy. I huddled in the corner of the expansive seat, trying to put as much distance as possible between myself and the man, that crushing presence, who soon got in. The car door shut, completely sealing off all outside light and noise. The enclosed space instantly held only the two of us. The air was thick, like solidified honey, yet taut, like a fully drawn bow. The engine emitted a low hum, and the car smoothly merged into traffic. Arthur leaned back on the opposite side, his posture relaxed, yet he was like a resting lion, every pore exuding an aura of total control. He didn't look at me, his gaze fixed on the rapidly receding streetscape outside the window. His profile was cold and perfectly chiseled, the scar beneath his Adam's apple appearing deeper in the dim light. But I could distinctly feel that all his attention was firmly locked onto me, like an invisible spider web. I tightly clutched my aching wrist, knuckles white, my body trembling slightly from extreme tension and unknown fear. My heart hammered like a drum in the silent compartment. Where are we going? What does he want? The chaotic, burning, suffocating images of that night churned uncontrollably in my mind, mixing with the residual heat on my wrist, making it almost impossible to breathe. The car left the bustling coastal town, the scenery alongside the road gradually became open and unfamiliar. The sunset painted the sky in deep gold and red. Through the dark-tinted windows, the dappled shadows of trees cast flickering darkness inside the car, falling across Arthur's sharply defined profile, outlining his tightly pressed lips and clenched jawline. The black Phantom silently drove into a coastal estate. Passing through the imposing black wrought iron gates, following the winding private drive lined with meticulously manicured lawns and silent ornamental trees, it finally stopped before a modernist villa of stark, minimalist lines and overwhelming presence. Massive floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the heavy twilight and the glimmering ocean surface, cold and vast, like a meticulously constructed fortress. The car door opened, and the salty, cold sea breeze rushed in. My wrist was firmly gripped by Arthur, and I was half dragged, half led out of the car. I stumbled, trying to keep pace with his steady steps. Having abandoned my heels during the escape, my bare feet now trod on the cold, polished marble steps, the chill seeping into my soles. The interior of the villa was the epitome of severity. Towering vaulted ceilings, cold marble floors, vast abstract paintings hung on empty walls, furniture with sharp, linear designs, and a color palette of only black, white, and gray. There was no superfluous decoration, no trace of warmth. The air was filled only with the faint hum of the climate control system and the persistent, crisp scent of cedar and cigar on him. This was his territory, a cold, powerful, and unassailable kingdom. Arthur finally released my wrist. I immediately took a step back, rubbing the red mark on my wrist. Cautiously looking around like a startled bird that had stumbled into a lion's den. "Your room is upstairs." Arthur's voice broke the suffocating silence. He raised his hand, gesturing toward the cold, spiraling staircase, his gaze sweeping over my pale, tense face with the calm of someone observing an object. "Jason will arrange everything you need." A middle-aged man in a butler's uniform, his expression stern, silently appeared at the landing and bowed slightly. "Miss, please follow me." I looked at the cold stairs. Then at Arthur's broad back as he stood by the enormous floor-to-ceiling window, facing away from me, seemingly admiring the twilight sea view. That silhouette exuded absolute control and detachment. I bit my lower lip. I had no choice. Run? In this secluded, heavily guarded fortress? It was a delusional dream. I could only follow the butler named Jason, step by step, onto the cold marble stairs, walking as if on thin ice. The room was large, still in cold tones. Beyond the huge window was a vast sea view, the twilight heavy. The walk-in closet was stocked with brand new, expensive, and surprisingly perfectly sized clothing, from casual wear to luxurious evening gowns. The bathroom was fully equipped with top-tier skincare products, emitting delicate scents. Every material comfort was provided, utterly luxurious, yet it felt more like a beautifully decorated cage. Jason placed an exquisite tray on the table, bearing steaming, beautifully plated food, then silently withdrew, closing the heavy door behind him. I was alone in the room. A deathly silence. I could only hear the muffled sound of waves crashing against the rocks outside. My tightly wound nerves finally had a moment to relax. I leaned against the cold door panel, slowly sliding down onto the carpet. The residual soreness in my body, the red marks on my wrist, and those chaotic, searing memory fragments surged in like a tide. I buried my face deep in my knees, my shoulders shaking silently. Anger, fear, sorrow, complex emotions wrapped around my heart like vines, nearly suffocating me. I thought I had escaped that opulent prison in the morning. Hidden in the farthest corner, severed all ties, and started anew. But this man, Arthur, had effortlessly torn through all my disguises and efforts, bringing me back like a disobedient pet. He was powerful, dangerous, and unquestionable. His eyes seemed to pierce through all my weakness. What should I do? I don't know how long passed. Outside the window, the sea was a deep, inky blue, only a few sparse stars and the beam from a distant lighthouse piercing the darkness. Curled up on the carpet, I was utterly exhausted, my mind hazy, and weariness crept in. Knock, knock, knock. A soft yet distinct tapping sounded on the door. I jolted awake, my heart leaping to my throat. I scrambled up, hastily wiping my face, my voice thick with a nasal tone. Who is it? There was a moment of silence outside, followed by that low, commanding voice I was already beginning to recognize. It's me. The doorknob turned. Arthur's tall figure appeared in the doorway, not stepping in, but standing at the junction of light and shadow. He had changed into a dark silk lounge suit, his collar slightly open, softening the coldness of the day, yet his aura remained powerful. He held a glass of water in one hand and a familiar small black velvet box in the other. His gaze rested on my slightly swollen eyes and messy hair, his deep eyes betraying no emotion. Crying? He asked, his voice clear in the silent room, sounding neither like a question nor a statement. I instinctively avoided his gaze, unwilling to let him see my dishevelment. Arthur didn't press the matter. He walked in, his steps steady, carrying a silent pressure. He came up to me and placed the glass of water on a small side table. Then, he opened the velvet box. Inside was the pearl earring. In the soft light of the room, it glowed with a warm, subtle luster, the dark red bloodstain on the post like a tiny badge, an indelible mark. He said nothing, simply extending his hand. His strong, defined fingers, with an undeniable force, gently took hold of my small earlobe. That searing touch made my whole body tremble. I wanted to pull away but was firmly pinned in place by his gaze. He leaned in slightly, very close. His warm breath grazed my sensitive earlobe, causing a slight tingling sensation. He worked with concentration, a strange gentleness mixed with irresistible force. Carefully, compellingly, fastening the cold pearl earring back onto my left earlobe. The cold metal post passed through the piercing, bringing a faint sting. The warm touch of the pearl settled against my skin. His strong fingers lingered briefly on the tender skin of my earlobe, the heat almost scalding me. Wear this, his low voice sounded so close, full of absolute possession, like a declaration of ownership. Don't lose it again. Having finished, he straightened up, his gaze pausing for a moment on my earring-adorned earlobe, then slowly moving up to meet my startled, uncertain eyes, which were flushed faintly red from the overly intimate action. His eyes were deep and bottomless, swirling with a dark current I couldn't read. He didn't say another word. He picked up the glass of water from the side table, turned, and walked out of the room. The heavy door silently closed behind him. I was left alone in the room, accompanied by the powerful residue of his presence. I stood motionless, my trembling fingertips touching my left earlobe. The tiny pearl, warm with the lingering heat of his touch, felt like a brand, a tether, pressed tightly against my skin. The sound of waves crashing against the rocks still faintly reached me, but in the cold, deep silence of this fortress, something inside me had quietly fractured, a minuscule, imperceptible crack. A sudden, fierce downpour lashed down without warning. The wind howled, and the villa was blazing with light. Dinner was conducted in suffocating silence. A cold distance separated us at the two ends of the long dining table. I mechanically cut the premium Wagyu beef on my plate, utterly tasteless. Arthur sat at the head of the table, his posture elegant, his movements precise, as if handling an impersonal document. Only the occasional, subtle clink of cutlery against the fine-boned china punctuated the nerve-stretching stillness. His deep gaze occasionally swept over me, carrying scrutiny and an unreadable profundity that made me fidget. Suddenly, a sharp, piercing ring of the doorbell cut through the storm and the silence like an alarm. Jason appeared silently at the dining room entrance, a rare look of gravity on his stern face. "Sir, Mississippi Mr. Stephen and his friends are outside. They are rather agitated. Demanding to see Miss Viola." The silver fork in my hand clattered onto the plate, my face instantly went stark white. "Stephen! How dare he follow me here?" A cold surge of terror seized me. Arthur's movements remained unhurried. He leisurely placed the last piece of beef into his mouth, then picked up his napkin and elegantly dabbed his lips. Throughout the entire process, he didn't even lift an eyelid. Only after setting down the napkin did he slowly raise his gaze, his eyes placid, looking at my pale face. "Let him in." The voice was quiet, yet like cold metal, it struck the stagnant air. The heavy oak door was opened. A blast of wind, frigid with rain, rushed in. Stephen was soaked, his hair plastered to his forehead, his face twisted into a grotesque mask blending alcohol, fury, and near-obsessive madness. Behind him were three equally disheveled young men, clearly his hangers-on. "Viola!" The moment Stephen entered, his bloodshot eyes locked onto me by the dinner table, completely ignoring Arthur at the head. "You are here. With this dangerous man." His voice was hoarse, filled with frantic rage born of humiliation. "Do you know who he is?" "Huh? Former gang boss. Hands stained with blood. You'd rather sleep with this demon than come back to me?" The vile words spewed out like venom, every syllable vicious. One of his cronies behind him yelled in support. "Yeah. Stephen was so good to you, who are you trying to impress?" "Shut up!" Stephen suddenly roared, seemingly regaining some sense of control. He turned back to me, his eyes filled with malicious possessiveness. "Viola, you're coming with me. Get out of this hellhole. I forgive you, let's start over." I was trembling with indignation. The intense humiliation and anger made me abruptly stand up, the chair scraping loudly against the marble floor. "Stephen! You are disgusting. Get out!" My voice was sharp with extreme fury, carrying an unprecedented power. "Get out!" Stephen looked as if he'd heard the funniest joke, laughing maniacally, even taking a step to rush toward me. "I'm taking you with me today. You belong to me." The instant Stephen's hand was about to touch my arm, crack. A muffled thud. It was so fast I couldn't even follow the movement. Stephen was flung backward as if hit by a speeding truck, his body violently arching, the arrogant expression on his face instantly replaced by extreme pain and shock. He didn't even manage a full scream before he crashed heavily and miserably onto the cold, hard marble floor. He skidded several meters, overturning a heavy decorative vase with a sharp, shattering sound. Arthur slowly retracted his lightning-fast fist. He stood elegantly beside me, his posture almost languid, but his deep, bottomless eyes had, at this moment, completely plunged into an icy abyss. What churned within was not anger, but a pure, cold, soul-freezing intent to kill. Arthur's icy gaze, like a physical blade, swept over Stephen writhing in pain on the floor and the thugs trembling like grains in a sieve. "Throw them out." The three words were cold, calm, yet carried absolute, destructive power, like a sovereign's final decree. "Clean it up." No sooner had he spoken than several black-suited bodyguards appeared at the doorway, silent, like iron towers, like ghosts. Their movements were swift and brutal, ruthlessly dragging the men on the floor away. Screams and pleas were muffled by the heavy oak door, instantly swallowed by the roar of the storm. Only the two of us remained in the dining room. A deathly silence. Only the violent rain outside and the frantic pounding of my heart could be heard. Arthur slowly lowered his gaze, looking at me standing close by. My slender body was still trembling slightly, my cheeks flushed an unnatural red from anger and shock, but my eyes were blazing with a fire that had been fully ignited, defiant yet vulnerable. I looked up, and for the first time, didn't shy away, meeting the lingering chill in his eyes. That single punch, fast, accurate, and vicious, carrying a power that crushed everything, instantly destroyed all the filth and threat Stephen represented. The shock, like an electric current, broke through the last wall of fear within me. I looked at this man, suffocatingly powerful and terrifyingly dangerous, who had, without hesitation, crushed every threat for me, as if protecting his most treasured territory. An unspeakable, burning torrent, a mix of the adrenaline from surviving the ordeal, the thrill of being protected, and his repressed, fatally attractive pull that was constantly ignited and extinguished, surged like long-accumulated volcanic lava, breaking down all rational defenses. I didn't even think. My slender arms shot up and wrapped around Arthur's neck. As a flicker of rare astonishment crossed his deep eyes, I rose onto my tiptoes, putting all my strength into pressing my lips tightly against his perpetually cold, rigid mouth. It was trembling, reckless, yet filled with a desperate, all-or-nothing resolve and scorching desire. This kiss was like a lit fuse. Arthur's body instantly went rigid. The coldness in his eyes swirled for less than a second, then was utterly consumed by a more turbulent, searing magma. It was a wildfire that had been completely ignited, capable of burning everything. In the next second, the world tilted. His powerful arms abruptly tightened around my too slender waist like steel chains, the other hand forcefully clamping the back of my head. He instantly reversed the situation, transforming my clumsy kiss into a violent act of pillage and consumption. He was no longer the composed, controlled emperor, but a completely unleashed, fiercely possessive beast. Ah! My gasp was entirely swallowed by his scorching breath. I was violently lifted into his arms. My body suspended. In my vision, all that remained was his tense, aggressive jawline, and those terrifying, burning eyes. He carried me out of the cold dining room, each step echoing in my chest. We traversed the empty, luxurious, but emotionless living room and ascended the spiral staircase. My arms clung tightly to his neck, my face buried in the hot, intensely pheromonal scent of his neck, feeling the powerful pulse of his carotid artery wildly synchronizing with my own frantic heartbeat. The door to the master bedroom was kicked open and then slammed shut with a bang, sealing us off from all the wind and rain outside. Beyond the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, the night sky was pitch black. A curtain of violent rain occasionally torn by lightning, illuminating our entangled silhouettes within the room. No lights were turned on. In the darkness, the senses were infinitely amplified. His scorching lips, with punishing force, left burning marks on my tender mouth, my sensitive earlobe, and my vulnerable neck. His rough, calloused hands explored beneath my dress without hindrance, stroking my back, which was smooth as silk. Every touch brought on uncontrollable shivers and broken sobs. His powerful, corded body pressed tightly against me. His defined abs leaving clear outlines on my flat stomach. The scalding heat of his body, penetrating my thin clothes, threatened to melt me. Arthur, I gasped amidst his violent taking and the tempestuous onslaught, my voice broken and alluring, carrying an unfamiliar, desperate yearning. This single utterance of his name was the most potent catalyst. He pressed me down forcefully onto the large, cold bed, his heavy body descending with absolute control. In the darkness, his deep eyes were like burning ice stars, firmly locking onto my misty, shimmering gaze. That look no longer held fear or resistance, it now clearly reflected the desire of surrender and an almost sacrificial acceptance. "Look at me!" His low command, carrying an undeniable roughness, his hot breath fanning my lips. I was forced to meet his scorching gaze, my heart hammering almost to the point of explosion. My body responded honestly under his control, every inch of my skin craved deeper contact. It was a resonance that reached the soul, a willing surrender conquered by absolute power. Clothing tore in the violent struggle. In the darkness, only two scorching bodies remained tightly entwined. His powerful intrusion, with irresistible force, instantly filled all my emptiness and longing. The overwhelming impact and the subsequent, soul-consuming supreme pleasure made me arch my swan-like neck, letting out a long, tearful moan, my slender fingers digging deep into the taut, powerful muscles of his back. The rain outside hammered even harder against the glass, thunder roared, like a symphony for this fierce collision of soul and flesh. In the darkness, all that remained was heavy breathing, suppressed growls, and the primitive, heart-stopping rhythm of bodies colliding. This time, there was no drug-induced haze, no unclear attachment. There was only the purest, most extreme attraction, thoroughly ignited on a stormy night, burning into a raging inferno. My slender body, like a fully bloomed flower, endured the storm beneath him, tightly entwined with my long-awaited salvation. My soul trembled and swayed in the agony and ecstasy, ultimately plunging without hesitation toward that single, powerful light. The morning light, like melted gold leaf, gently streamed along the edges of the enormous floor-to-ceiling windows, dispelling the lingering gloom and chaos of last night's storm. I awoke in an unprecedented state of deep-seated languor and contentment. My body felt as though it had been gently disassembled and reassembled, leaving behind only a distinct soreness and a full, secure sense of being claimed. I found myself tightly embraced by a hot, solid body. Arthur's arm, like the strongest vine, possessively encircled my slender waist, keeping me firmly confined against his chest. I shifted slightly and lifted my head. Arthur was already awake. He lay on his side, propped up on one arm, his deep eyes stripped of all their coldness and the wildfire of the night, now holding only a calm, nearly focused gaze, fixed steadily on me. The morning light outlined his sharply defined profile, softened the scar beneath his Adam's apple, and cast tiny fragments of gold into the depths of his eyes. He didn't speak. He simply lowered his head, placing a light, gentle kiss on my smooth forehead. The warmth carried a silent, heart-stirring tenderness. His kisses then traced down my cheekbone and eyelid until they reached my slightly swollen, yet fuller and more alluring lips. This kiss was no longer a plunder, but a tender caress, filled with the warmth of dawn and a sense of settled peace. I closed my eyes, my long lashes fluttering like startled butterfly wings, but I no longer pulled away. I responded to his gentle touch with a clumsy, tentative openness. An unfamiliar warmth spread from where he kissed, flowing through my limbs, finally gathering in my chest and gently expanding. Still running? His low voice, husky from sleep, brushed against my lips, his breath warm. I opened my eyes, meeting his bottomless gaze, which clearly reflected my small image. In those eyes, there was an unmasked vulnerability I had never seen, and even a slight, almost imperceptible tension. I gently shook my head, my cheeks flushed, my voice barely a whisper, yet utterly clear. No. I'm not running. These 3 words were like a key unlocking a heavy lock. A flicker of instantaneous relief flashed in Arthur's eyes, then was replaced by a deeper, more intense satisfaction. He tightened the arm around my waist, pulling me closer, my cheek pressed against his warm, solid chest, listening to his steady, powerful heartbeat. It was a haven after the storm, strong and reassuring. Stephen, his low voice repeated, carrying a cold finality, but now directed outward, against everything else. He and his whole family will never appear before you again. A simple statement that declared Stephen's complete and permanent dismissal. I murmured a quiet into his chest, entirely unperturbed. The name Stephen, along with that past of desperate compliance, had completely turned to ash in my heart, scattered and covered by last night's storm and the current warmth. Arthur. I hesitated, my fingertips unconsciously lightly tracing his defined chest muscles, feeling the immense power contained beneath the hard contours. Why, me? This was the deepest question in my heart. He was so powerful, so dangerous, and so wealthy. I had nothing but trouble. Arthur was silent for a moment, his deep gaze fixed on the vast, calm ocean outside the window. The morning light framed his sharp silhouette with a soft golden edge. That night, in the warehouse, he lowered his head, his forehead gently resting against my hair, his voice resonating softly above me. I saw your eyes. They were like the cleanest glass, filled with terror, but no resentment, only pure despair and a stupid, flickering plea that refused to die out. His fingertip gently stroked the smooth pearl earring on my earlobe, a gesture of incredible tenderness. His voice held a strange huskiness, a softness never before shown to anyone. I wanted to capture that faint light. He lifted my chin, compelling me to look into his eyes. In those bottomless, icy pools, my reflection was now clear, calm, and focused. Viola, you are that light. It shone into my murky, calculating swamp, it is the single, pure light. I intend to capture it, possess it, and make it belong only to me. His words still carried a strong undercurrent of possessive control, but for the first time, they clearly revealed a nearly greedy craving and the deep-seated valuing of worth hidden beneath his power. I gazed at him, at the intense, undisguised possessiveness in his eyes. And the undertow and vulnerability hidden beneath that possessiveness. In the deepest part of my heart, the final layer of ice shattered and melted completely under that honest, searing gaze, turning into a warm current. He wasn't an omnipotent deity after all. He struggled in the darkness, too, and craved light. And I had become his light. Tears sprang to my eyes without warning, blurring my vision. Not from sadness, not from fear, but from a profound feeling of being fully accepted and cherished. I stretched out my arms, and for the first time, proactively and tightly hugged his broad back. Burying my face deep into the warm scent of his neck. Arthur, my voice was thick with emotion, yet filled with an unprecedented firmness and tenderness. I'm here. No longer a reluctant captive, but a willing homing bird. Arthur's body visibly trembled. Then, he let out a low, satisfied sigh, like a traveler who had finally reached their long journey's end. He tightened his arms, pulling my small, soft body deeper and closer into his embrace. Beyond the enormous floor-to-ceiling windows, the sea and sky merged into one, the sun shining brightly. The waves gently murmured, like an eternal background sound. In this coastal villa, once cold as a fortress, now bathed in morning light and warmth, two scarred souls from entirely different worlds finally found their singular anchor, tightly embracing each other. The storm had subsided. At the end of the darkness was our only, peaceful, and everlasting light. The pearl earring on my earlobe shimmered with a warm, subtle luster in the morning light, like a mark, a promise, and the gentlest salvation at the end of the darkest night.